After a lifetime of researching the dynamic and enigmatic world of light entertainment, I've decided to ditch my notebook and meet the people who inspire me. What makes them the people they are? How do they feel about the show business landscape in which they find themselves? And in a world where anyone can be a star, is there still a need for performers who have universal appeal? Come with me on a journey of discovery as I get a unique insight into Britain's favourite stars with a little help from my glamorous assistants. Yeah, well, I say glamorous, more like hazardous. And of course, we'll have a bit of fun along the way.
Evergreen performer and comedian Richard Digance broke into the folk music scene of the 1970s, touring the US where he found himself as a support act for the great Steve Martin. Before long, he introduced comedy sections into his act and never looked back. Throughout the 80s and 90s, Richard became a regular contributor to light entertainment shows of the day, from Surprise Surprise to Des O'Connor Tonight. I caught up with the veteran entertainer to talk music, comedy, and reflections on a glittering career. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Richard Digance. Okay, so the first question that Josh has is, like so many of our best-loved comedians during this time, your comedy arose from the folk scene of the time. Is there a correlation between folk music and comedy?
There certainly used to be. On the college circuit, especially where I started, we were called the folk entertainers. Obviously, Billy Connolly was the pioneer. And then there was Max Boyce in Wales. There was Mike Harding in the Midlands. And then there was Carrot, who we never took seriously because he didn't play the guitar. He used it as a prop. But say it, I don't care. And I sort of jumped on their bandwagon sort of maybe 4 or 5 years after they came up, you know. And it was ready, we're talking late 60s, early 70s, and comedy was ready for a change, you know, from me sitting at home with my mum and dad, watching blokes in velvet jackets and bow ties, doing mother-in-law jokes, you know. But there was a university circuit that was more thinking. And even today, it's where so many people, before they get to the Edinburgh Fringe, you know, they do the college circuits. Because there is an audience out there that wants to hear more than mother-in-law jokes and Irish jokes, you know, and stuff like that, which is so dinosaur. Even in 1970, 71, someone like me who was at college anyway, I just thought, it don't make me laugh. I'm a storyteller, really. And that was, I think, what Connolly pioneered. And it hadn't really been seen much in this country. A lot of Americans did it, but over here it was quite a new thing. And we all cashed in, which was great.
Sounds good.
Mm.
Okay. So next one. You appeared on ITV's variety series, The Comedians. Today, the likes of Stan Boardman and Bernard Manning's material is frowned upon for obvious reasons. But beyond the xenophobia, in what ways did this show pave the way for stand-up comedy on TV?
I never appeared on The Comedians. It's a question that lots and lots of people believe I did. But I never actually did. I never actually got on telly till early 80s, really. So I was trudging round as a support act before my telly days. I was on radio. I had my own show on Radio 2, which was good also for comedy. And other stuff, you know, like when my radio show was going out, there was also like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. There was really good programming, you know, which was to a degree ignored by telly for about 5, 6, 7 years, you know. But the 70s for me were essentially being a musician, telling funny stories. That was what I set out to do. And through the 70s, I just supported so many people, not because I was good, but I was easy. I was one bloke with a guitar. Yeah. Promoters loved that. There was no drum kit that had to move before the top of the bill came on, you know.
You just walked in, guitar in hand.
I did.
Yeah.
And it was a cuckoo existence because the audience didn't know me. I was a nothing. And so I had nothing to lose, and I thought, I'll give it my best shot. And so I was playing to big arenas, thousands and thousands of people who didn't particularly want to see me. And my mission was to impress them, get them singing, have a sing-song, and get them laughing. If I did that every night, I used to feel I'd really achieved something, because when you're supporting like Supertramp and Jethro Tull and Elkie Brooks, Joan Armatrading, and all these big names, then certainly weren't there to see me. And so I just thought, well, nothing to lose. But it was the start of me creating a sort of a small following of my own, really. And I went along with that. That was fine. As I always say, I only went into comedy and music to chat girls up anyway, So, like many people, I'm quite an introverted person off stage, so it was a nice expression, if you like. And then telly, it was all totally different. I mean, 1983, I went on television, stayed there till about 1995, 96, and I got fed up with it. It was as simple as that. And what happened, and I remember what happened, I was in Clacton in Essex, just done a show, and a woman came up at the end of the show for, signature and all that. And I said, "Did you enjoy the show?" And she said, "Yeah." She said, "I didn't know you played the guitar." And I suddenly realised I've been doing so many things like Countdown, and poems where I wasn't playing. But there were genuinely some people didn't even know I had put so many years, into being a guitarist. And I thought, no, I'm doing this wrong. I want to be, if you like, I suppose the best way to describe it is a modern day troubadour. That's what I always wanted to be. I didn't want to be just a stand-up. And it's proved its point, because most of the people, I'm not an authority on this, but I think most of the people who were stand-ups when I was on telly, they're not really around anymore. Things change. The younger ones come through, and they're good. They are bloody good. And I never wanted to be a cobweb performer. It was never, ever in my remit, really, to do that. So I chucked telly in, started doing soundtracks for programming, the guitar you hear in the background on Country File or whatever. And then I started working with Bill Bryson, which was great. He's the world's biggest travel writer, and I was doing his audio books for him and writing his funny songs for him. So I took a different tack, if you like. You lose your audience along the way. My theory was I was going to lose my audience anyway, because nothing is forever in this game, I can assure you. A bit like a footballer, you can be a brilliant footballer, but you're no good at 33. And I realised that, and I didn't want to be on a cooking programme, and all that old bollocks. I didn't want to do it. I wanted to do what I do when I was a student, basically. And luckily I had a good CV with the BAFTA and all that stuff, so I was able to really pump myself really hard to go into a different channel, if you like. It makes me more content. I don't care how many people come to see me. That's never been my issue. I don't build theatres. I play in them. And if they put too many seats in when I'm on, it's not my fault. And so I just basically had a great time on television and moved on. I changed my job, like we all do. We all change jobs, And I decided to change mine. I was getting bored, to be honest, being on telly. And 2 daughters, and single parent with 2 daughters. I didn't like doing the school runs and getting prodded. Saw you last night, and all that stuff. And it didn't bother me, but I didn't want my daughters to actually see me as a strange, odd person who people wanted to come up and be stupid to, And that's why
by people and,
I didn't enjoy it, funnily enough. And yet, it's stupid, isn't it? Because that's what you work for. You work for the recognition. When you get it, it gets on your bloody nerves.
And you told me room anus.
And you
You don't want to end up eating kangaroo anus. Like on I'm a Celebrity.
definitely not on television.
Behind closed doors.
Or maybe not in my private life either. I know exactly what you mean, Josh. You know, the thing is, there are people who will just do anything to go on television, especially these days, because there's so many different sort of programming you can do. I don't want to go in a kitchen. You're quite right. I don't want to go in the jungle and eat animals. You know, thank you very much. But when I came out of telly, I was just starting to... I was lucky because I had my own show on Saturday night, so I was very proud of that, you know, and I wanted to do guitar duets with Brian May and stuff that is still on my website as a bit of an achievement. I didn't really want to do Celebrity Squares and, you know, all that stuff. And, of course, I didn't have my guitar with me. I felt a bit odd. So I wasn't ever your bog standard stand-up. Never wanted to be. Comedy, yeah, storyteller, yeah. But I didn't want to go, testing. My wife is so fat. You know, I never wanted to do that. So I never did.
Fair enough. Okay. The 1970s was a very political, turbulent decade, but for entertainment it was extremely rich. In comedy terms, finding yourself alongside people like Victoria Wood, Lenny Henry and Billy Connolly. Researching this period, I find it very interesting. How do you think your generation bridged the gap between mainstream variety and alternative comedy?
Well, at that time, theatres were married to television. I'll give you an example. When I was a little boy, probably before you two were born, and there was like, let's say Morecambe and Wise, let's just say, they would be on telly a lot, but they'd also do theatre tours a lot as well. You know, they were married together. And nowadays it isn't like that. You know, you get the McIntyres of the world, they will do the O2 in London, which I'm so anti, because comedy is not for stadiums. It's for this here tonight. You know, it's intimacy. And it's watching people's faces and letting them enjoy what you're doing and saying. You know, and I always think it's a bit of a bank raid if you're going to go and do... And boast as well that I made 40 million quid on 40 shows or whatever. Big deal. You know, that don't impress me much. There's a song. And the marriage in the 70s that Josh is asking wasn't actually that difficult, because there were talent shows, because Victoria Wood came through on a talent show. Either New Faces or Opportunity Knocks, I can't remember which, but she came through on a talent show. And she was a folkie. You know, she was a folkie. In later years, Pam Ayres, the poet, came through the folk scene, did the talent show, came through. It wasn't as vicious as it is now with the panel of a talent show like Cowell, Simon Cowell or whatever, who wants to be more important than the artist, which I'm also against, you know, because if someone gets up and he mocks them, which he does quite frequently, it shatters their confidence and he ruins their future, their careers, their dreams, all because he gets a cheap laugh. Talent shows back then that Josh is asking wasn't actually like that. It was an opportunity for talent to actually come through. You know, that was massively, massively different. With Billy Connolly, I think I've already explained that he wasn't really a typical stand-up comic. He would do stories about the crucifixion, or he'd do stories, you know, about working in the shipyards in Glasgow or whatever, which was quite interesting, but very, very, very funny. The funniest line I've ever heard, I attribute to Billy Connolly, and I still remember it. He was talking about Bonnie Prince Charlie, and he said, it's really hard to take someone seriously when they're named after 3 sheepdogs. and I just thought, you're clever. You know, you're not just a comic, you're actually clever. And I was very grateful that he began our route, if you like. And the transition wasn't as difficult as what people believe, because you're quite right. The whole political world was changing, and comedy was changing. It's changing today. it's always changing. Language is changing. When I first went on telly in 1983, I was told that I could not mention wigs or false teeth. That was 1983. And now you see how they endorse comedy now, and you just think, really? It was true. It was true. And now, of course, there are a lot of female comedians around, which there weren't. That's why Victoria Ward was so unique. There weren't that many women around doing comedy then. And nowadays, of course, they can do, private part jokes and all that stuff. Men can't do it to women, but women can certainly do the knob jokes and all that stuff. Through that transition of the 70s, that would never ever have happened. But it was changing all the way along. There was a revolution, I suppose, going on at that time. I think this is quite a boast and a bit arrogant, but if we hadn't pioneered that college humour, you may not have seen these people going through the fringe at Edinburgh and so on. We had nothing like that. It didn't exist. But now, people can do what they want, say what they want, and it isn't hinged on standing on telly with a waistcoat on, doing stupid jokes. And I'm really proud of that.
Okay, so touring the USA, you found yourself as a supporting act for Steve Martin.
I did.
How did this come about?
Well, I was on the same record label. We're both on a little label called Flying Fish, which was Mercury Records. Steve Martin taught me more than anybody else I've ever worked with. For a start off, everyone knows Steve Martin. He's a movie star and he's grey-haired lunatic. I can assure you, in private life, he's the shyest, most well-mannered person you could ever wish to meet. And I was warned about him because they told me, watch his encore. And what he used to do for an encore, he used to take the audience out into the street and show them how to steal a car. And you think, what? How'd you do it? And he did it, and I was with him. I mean, he did it every night, genuinely. I think he got done for it in the end, I don't know. But that's how he used to finish a show. Mm-hmm. And his bravery with an audience, and that's what this is all about being brave, taught me so much. He's also a fantastic musician. He's the best banjo player probably in the world. He's an enormously talented bloke. And we used to finish, with dueling banjos, guitar, banjo. It was great working with him, And what he taught me was go as far as you dare. Don't be that bloke with a microphone who just heard a joke from his mates in the pub the night before and then just go and play it to 100 people. Go off the wall, don't tick that box, go and get another box to tick, and when I came home, I realised I'd learnt so much about how dangerous you can be on stage, and mixing it with music as well, don't forget, which was very much me. It was a very important time. Great to work with, really nice bloke, and God knows I've worked with some tossers in my time. And you just think, look, is Steve Martin, a huge legend, can be a polite man, nice guy, good laugh, bottle of Jack Daniels every night after a show, then why can't everybody else? And in this world of entertainment, which is very shallow, I have to say, there are little gems within, little jewels. Steve Martin was one of them.
Brilliant. Okay. You even appeared on the BBC's seminal The Old Grey Whistle Test. Notorious for being raw and rustic, what are your memories of such an iconic show?
It was iconic, Josh. I can tell you it was. To have someone being funny on the Old Grey Whistle Test was absolutely unheard of. Totally unheard of. And Bob Harris came to see me in Oxford and he laughed and he said, do you fancy doing the whistle test? And I said, only if I get a badge. because everybody wanted to wear a gold grey whistle test badge, and they were gold dust. It was like a Blue Peter badge for people on drugs, and it was like, yeah, give me a badge, I'll come and do it. And what I remember was the fear, because when you walk into an old grey whistle test studio, it's not the same as a TV studio. There's amps, there's drum kits, there's guitars, long-haired blokes, roadies, you know, rockers, studs, bikers, and I'm going on, hopefully to be a bit funny. And I remember Bob Harris introduced, because I did it twice, actually, once with Annie Nightingale as well. And I remember Bob Harris called me a British heritage, that's what he called me. No, a national treasure, sorry. He called me a national treasure. And I felt so big and I felt so special. And I never thought I would get away with it or do. That was quite early in my career. The next day, I lived in Essex, and the next day I walked into Romford round the market because I'd been on telly the night before. And I thought, I could get recognised. So I put my leather coat on and I was walking around. I had a lot of hair then, bushy hair. And I'm walking around Romford Market going, someone's going to recognise me in a minute. I was on the telly last night. And this bloke came up to me, and this is absolutely true, honestly. He said, can I have your autograph? And I went, yeah, of course, you know, I signed it. And he looked at it, and he looked at me, and I said, what's up? He said, I thought you were Leo Sayer. That's the only recognition I got on my first TV show, was people thinking I was someone else. Fantastic.
Is it true that it used to overrun?
Is it true?
That it used to overrun?
What, the whistle test?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it wasn't live, so it could run as long as you wanted it to run. When I went into television, I wanted, with my show, I wanted to see guitar leads, I wanted to see amps, I wanted to see an audience, you know, and put the lights up, let's see an audience. None of this London weekend television stuff with lights in the background and all that, you know, fairground stuff. Let's do it, warts and all. And maybe that could have easily come from my experiences of the whistle test, because my TV shows, I remember Brian May did a duet with me. I loved it so much. I said to him, can we do it again? Well, aren't you happy with it? And I actually said, no. And I was delighted with it. I just wanted to play with Brian May again. And it was the same when I became like an honorary member of Status Quo, which was a huge honour because I love Quo. And we did exactly the same. We ran so much overtime because they did whatever you want and all that stuff and rocking all over the world. And then we did a little song, the three of us, me, Francis and Rick Parfitt, sadly gone, called Old Address Book. And I loved it so much. Me and Status Quo sitting on 3 stools playing acoustic guitars, that I did exactly the same thing. I think we can do it better than this. We couldn't. We did it great. I was very proud. But I bullshitted, basically, just so that I could play again with Quo. Nothing that you see on telly, really. Television is a game of untruths. It isn't the real world. And what you see is not necessarily what's filmed. We know this from any aspect of it, even political stuff. You know, you'll still see stuff edited as the BBC suit it. You know, I'm a celebrity, get me out of here. Can't possibly be anything like a screen. They must have people on hand. They must have people there looking after animals. They must have people there in case you get a nip from an animal or whatever.
People hidden behind trees everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And they want the arguments. They want the people not getting on.
Oh, of course.
You know, of course they do, yeah. But often they are getting on. And they're having a great time of it, I'm sure. But I've said to everybody that I know, my mates and family, never believe telly. Never believe telly. You know, it's great when Ant and Dec are on because Ant can laugh at all Dec's jokes and Dec can laugh at all Ant's jokes, all premeditated, of course, and it sounds like off the cuff, but everything is rehearsed. It has to be, because if you think about it, a camera has to go into your face if you're going to speak.
Capture that moment.
If Josh crashes in on you, then the camera isn't on Josh. So you go, hang on a minute, let's just do that again. Can we, let's just go into Josh's face, you know, get the camera on him. So it cannot possibly be off the cuff, much as everyone loves to think so.
Do you think that's why Freddie Star didn't work further, like later on in his career, because of like the change in television, because he was more
Yeah.
less live? Yeah.
Yeah, I spent 4 years working with Jim Davison, we were chalk and cheese, you know, but we were both TV acts and we were both with the same management, so I did a lot of times. I went to the Falklands with Jim Davison. I saw the changes happening, Josh. You know, the thing is, if you take someone like Freddie Star, that's exactly the material I'm talking about, which is not the way it is. It ain't super cool to have a go at women and all that stuff that Freddie Star used to do. I don't dispute he did it well, but it was a different era. I think it's very unfair to judge someone who was doing something in the 60s and 70s. Another talent contest winner, by the way, Freddie Star. I don't think it's fair, and Jim Davidson. Yeah, there's loads of them. Because it was okay for the time. I think you mentioned Stan Boardman, another one, you know, who was great for the time. But if you put Russell Howard or Sean Locke, who I think is great, if you put them back into the 60s and 70s, they would have probably been thrown into the Tower of London, you know, for the material they do. And we were never allowed to talk about, in my case, let's say Edward Heath, like people talk today about Boris Johnson on stage. I would be, well, they wouldn't mind me doing it, but they wouldn't let me do it on television. Absolutely not done. We are television, we're sacred and stuff. Nowadays you can say what you want, and they deserve it.
The week that was revolutionary for its time.
Yeah, yeah. It was.
It was having to go at the establishment for the first time.
I think you're right. I think it was the first time. But don't forget, it wasn't mainstream television. They pushed it away. It had to come on. But it wasn't 8 o'clock viewing. You know, it's like, oh, we need to do this, but not at 8 o'clock. It's not really done. And in fact, there was a woman on that. That was the week that was. TW3, as we used to call it. I was only a little boy then. I hasten to add, Josh. I'm not 90, but but there was a girl singer called Millicent Martin, and she was one of the first topical singer-songwriters, you know. And I worked, when I began my career in radio, I worked with a guy called Bernard Braden, and there was another singer called Jake Thackeray, and he was a topical singer-songwriter. And I used to do like Pebble Mill at 1, for example. And they would always check the song. And if they thought it was a bit near the knuckle, do something else. Just do something else. I did a show at the Palladium with the Royals, and normally they will not allow you to just go on stage in front of the royal family and say what you want. And I remember I was doing a thing about the Grand Old Duke of York. You know, he had 10,000 men, you know, the little nursery rhyme. And the Duke of York was in the balcony, which was why I was doing it. And they pissed themselves, and they thought it was absolutely brilliant. And I refused to have my material censored by the Royals or by ITV. I said, look, I am me. You've booked me to be me. And if I can't do what I want, then you're taking my wings off me. I can't fly away, you know. Nowadays, of course, no one gives a toss. There's been an amazing transition of comedy in the last 20 years, I can assure you, because I've been at the sharp end, you know, and I've seen the changes. They're colossal, much more than like the Second World War onwards, you know, when everyone was still a stand-up and oi, 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 and all that stuff. Now, comedy is important. It's actually politically important. I think you're right. I think it might well have been through David Frost and TW, you know, I think.
Okay, so returning to comedy, you secured your own TV special in 1985 for Thames TV, A Dabble with Digance. What sort of accolade was this? How significant were studios such as Granada and TV Centre to the entertainment output of the day?
Yeah, we're a little bit askew with there. I think my first TV was it was late 83 into 84, and I didn't do any BBC stuff then, apart from Ronnie Corbett. I didn't do anything else because I was signed to ITV, and they didn't like you working with the enemy as such. And I don't think it was called A Dabble with Digance. I think that was, I'm really stretching my memory here. I think that there was one show called Dabble with Digance, which was Thames, but that was before I got my own show. My own show was London Weekend Television. And for me, I didn't worry about studios because they had an audience. And all I did was treat it as a gig. I just went out there and I warmed up. I was my own warm-up act. So before the cameras rolled, I used to go and do half an hour, get them singing, you know, tell them some funny stories and go, right, we're going to start filming in a minute. So I'll go and put some splosh on my face, you know, and put my shirt on and stuff like that. And they loved it, and they really felt part of it, you know, because I'd actually gone and broken the ice for them. So TV studios as such never really fazed me. I thought, well, they're only an audience. They're not going to be as hard as Supertramp doing the Breakfast in America tour. They're not going to be as hard as Jethro Tull, you know, heavy metal audiences and Deep Purple. They're not going to be that. Just go out there, Richard, and enjoy yourself. So I was never fazed by moving into telly at all.
Okay, and throughout the 90s, you were a regular contributor to light entertainment shows of the day. What was it like to work with TV royalty, including Cilla Black, Des O'Connor, and Ronnie Corbett?
Ronnie Corbett actually did one of my routines, the Jungle Cup final, in his big armchair. And I was very honoured, even though he nicked it. I was very, very honoured because he is a comedy legend. Cilla Black I only ever worked with on Surprise, Surprise, when there was a Digance fan was doing something or other, and I turned up behind his back and sang him his favourite song, only to be outshadowed by the Bee Gees, who were on the same show, who I think seemed to be quite more important than I was. And the other person you mentioned, Cilla Black,
Des O'Connor.
Des O'Connor was actually one of the real nice guys of television. Really nice, normal bloke. And of course, I did quite literally hundreds of countdowns. And Des O'Connor took Countdown over when Richard Whiteley passed away. And I found that difficult because Des O'Connor is actually a good working comic. He's done it all. With Richard Whiteley, when I did Countdown, Richard was a stooge, and I could be as funny as I wanted. Des O'Connor was a comedian. He wasn't a stooge, and therefore the interplay was completely different. And we both found it difficult because it was like scoring points, you know. But of the people, the younger people, you know, like yourselves, you know, there were some really nice guys. Jimmy Tarbuck was a fantastic bloke who encouraged young people to get up and do what you're made of, you know, bring that scousey stuff out of him, you know. He was a great pioneer of new people. Des O'Connor was. There were people that weren't, well, we won't mention names, that's wrong, but there were people who were just feathering their own nests and self-important, if you like. Des was great. Tarby was a really genuine bloke. The best one I ever worked with probably was Bob Monkhouse, who was an absolute gentleman, you know, in every way, just a gentleman. Photographic memory. Oh, Richard, I remember in 1979 you did a radio show and you did a song about a girl being packed up. Yeah, I did. I loved that song. I've got it somewhere at home, you know, and he was fantastic. So I do have nice memories of that whole television era, but I do think you have to move on. I just think that otherwise you're yesterday's fish and chips, you know, and I never wanted to do that. That's why I'm here tonight. I want to stand up, make people laugh and sing some songs. It's all I ever wanted to do. And people like Des O'Connor, Jimmy Tarbuck, they liked what I did. But there were people that I was in competition with, if you like, who didn't like what I did at all. But that's the way this industry is. It's a bit dog-eat-dog, you know, to get the ratings.
Okay. What's still the thrill of a live performance for you?
Good question. This is a really good question. I think if you're a performer, I think it is, and I know it's corny, but it is in your blood, you know, and it's not easy to just go, oh, sorry, I'm not going to do this anymore. I like the challenge of being ageless, because I'm 70, and that's quite old to be on the road, you know. But I like changing my material. I like going, I can write a song about that, you know. True, a lot of my stuff is nostalgic because my audience is of a certain age, you know, where they've been around the block a few times, you know, and it's no good me telling them stories about Little Mix, you know, stuff like that, because they won't be interested. But I do love the challenge of coming up with new material, which I do all the time. And I think if I didn't, I wouldn't be here tonight because no one would come and see me. But if you're going to keep churning your material around, and I'm quite lucky because I've got music as well behind me, so I can go and do the big festivals, which I've just done in the summer. And then you get a trickle from that for people to come to the concerts. So there's always a turnover, you know, of audience. What keeps me going? Well, I've got a mortgage for a start. I've got 2 daughters who've got horses. Yeah, they have to be paid. And I love it. I love playing the guitar. I actually love playing the guitar more than singing. But not being the world's best guitarist, it would be a crap night if you come and saw me just to play the guitar. But I will never stop. I don't think people do. I don't think people, actors you see on telly and you go, God, he was in blah, 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 you know, about 95 years ago or whatever. But I think that candle flickers in them, you know, for all time. It does for me, and I'm perfectly. I've made 34 albums because I love being in the studio and coming up with good, funny songs and things, you know. So I'm still going, but don't know how much longer, but I'm doing all right.
Looking back at your career, what's your proudest achievement?
Easy. Playing a guitar duet with Brian May that I mentioned. He was a genius, there's no question. And the way he let me, it was quite a humorous song, She's a Lady, and the way he let the words come out, he didn't blast a guitar around it, he waited until there was a nice little line and then in he'd come. And to see a real pro at work like that, I felt very proud, having been half of Digance and Brian May. I think it was a fantastic thing to have done, The royal stuff, which I should be proud of, didn't really bother me much, really, because I thought, well, they're only sitting up there in a balcony. What about this lot down here? A bit like John Lennon did, with the Beatles. They're the ones I want to entertain. If that lot up there in the balcony laugh, they didn't even bloody buy tickets anyway. They got comps. But I'll get this lot. And so I never felt that buzz of doing Live for My Majesties and stuff. When I did it, it wasn't a massive, massive thrill to me. The greatest achievement for me was to do my first headline concert, Key Theatre, Peterborough. Sold it out. And I never thought I'd do a concert. I thought I was always going to be a folk club act, just going around singing my songs, a few beers, a couple of fags, go home. To actually get to a concert level, I never expected that in a million years. And I don't know how many concerts I've done now. I think it's about 3,500 or something like that. I never expected that either. I just thought, well, I'll keep going till no one books me. I've only ever had one job in my life, and that's an ambulance driver. That's the only job I've ever had. And I always used to think to myself, well, if it all dries up, all goes wrong, I'll go back on the ambulances. It's a good, worthwhile job, Never had to, so I'm very lucky.
Excellent. And finally, what's next for Richard Digance?
I'm writing books at the moment. I've just started. I did a couple of books on Kindle, bloody waste of time, but I've actually started publishing my own books. The one I'm very proud of is my 100 Strangest Shows, which is literally came out this week. And it's about all the things that go wrong in this job. Turning up at Chichester to do a gig and nobody turned up. I mean, what do you do? I had to get paid, get my petrol money, so I went on to no one. Can't remember how well I went down. I don't remember that. Going to China, to entertain the troops. It was Hong Kong actually, but I wanted to go to China like everybody would. The only way I could get into China was to go and play at a British base, military base there. I'll do it, just so I could go and have a look at the population of China and do something that not many people in the West are ever allowed to do. Got there, 600 people, beautiful evening, you imagine in China, blue skies, gorgeous. Not one member of that audience spoke or understood a word of English because they were all Gurkhas. And I thought, what do I do? What do I do? So suddenly I'm getting them all clapping hands and clapping to the left, clapping to the right, tap your left. But then the Steve Martin knowledge comes in, because I used to do dueling banjos with him. Now dueling banjos, ding 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 ding, is known all over the world. And so I did dueling banjos where I was the guitar and 600 Gurkhas were the banjo. And they were following me, and all that. And it was fantastic. It was comedy that had no language barrier. And I defy anyone to say, comedy don't travel. Hang on, it does. I proved it in China. That was a fantastic thing. That's in the book as well, because I'm very proud of that. It depends what aspects of pride you mean, I mean, I think I was the first Dictionary Corner person to do 100 shows on Countdown. And I was quite proud of that at the time. But things pale into insignificance sometimes, you know, and you just think, yeah, well, I did it, you know. Nowadays, I like being an inspiration. Russ Noble, who's a great comic, says that I inspired him, and he used to listen to my show, and he learnt comedy from Richard Digance, which I think is absolutely fantastic and makes me feel a bit humble because he's a good comic. You know, if he was a pile of shit, I might think different, but he's good, you know. And the interesting thing is, to close the interview, the reason I'm still around is because there aren't many people who play the guitar and sing funny songs anymore. Very, very few. I know a couple, but they're not household names, you know. I think I might be the dinosaur that continues. Yeah, the guitar playing with the songs, have a sing, have a join in, you know, a bit like Boy Scouts around a campfire, I don't know. But it's gone to a degree, you know, well, to a big degree, because you're looking at the only person who does it. And maybe that's why I've got a longevity, because I don't really have any competition, to be honest.
What about Bill Bailey?
Keyboard.
Yeah. Not guitar.
Bill Bailey is, he should have been in my era of the folk scene, because he's exactly what we did. And Bill Bailey's a great storyteller, you know, a fantastic storyteller. I would like to see Bill Bailey do small venues, you know, where people can really get on top of him and, you know, and listen to things. But, you know, these people now, they get big, they go and do the big gigs. It's not really what I'm made of, you know, so that's that. How's that?
A big thank you to our guest for being the subject of another Beyond the Title interview. If you like this, why not browse the website and see if there's anything else that takes your fancy. Don't forget to like our Facebook page to receive updates of forthcoming interviews and to see more information about me and what I do. Thanks again, and hopefully see you next time for another Beyond the Title interview.